All right.
All right, we're back in Senate Judiciary. I'll resume our conversation about S12. I believe we're relatively close to being done with the walkthrough / markup of our first iteration of this. So, Michelle, if you want.
Do you want me to just keep walking through and then you can come back for the, okay. Right, so we just finished up, the exceptions to sealing and talking about who has access under the proposal. So I'm taking out in your amendment, I'm taking out subdivisions 10 through 12 around licensing.
What page again? I lost my
27.
27 and 28.
Thank you.
29 is just a procedural. Anybody speak up if anybody has any concerns about any of that stuff. So I would skip to page 31, section 7609. And this is expungement of criminal history records for an individual who's 18 to 21 years of age. So this I looked up. This was in 2018. This was adopted in 2018. So for someone who was 18 to 21 years of age at the time they committed, and remember, we're just talking about qualifying crimes, is expunged within 30 days after the date on which the individual successfully completed the terms and conditions of the sentence. So I know that the court brought up the issue around successful completion. And, you know, I mean, I get it. I thought that this statute, when I was looking at it, I mean, I would maybe like rearrange it a little bit, because if you look down at on page 32, subsection C on petitions, individual who's 18 to 21 years of age may file a petition with the court requesting expungement. And so it's a little confusing to me, and Brent wrote this, and so I could actually ask her, I don't know whether or not she would remember, but it was a little confusing to me about, because on the procedure there, it says that there's expungement within 30 days after the date that the individual successfully completed the terms. But then there's a petition process. So for me, it makes it a little confused, because it kind of sounds almost like it's automatic within 30 days. But I think maybe the intent was that that's the time in which you can place the petition, but I'll get clarification on that. The court raised the issue about, well, they don't know if someone successfully completed or not. I think that that's just like information that they're going to be submitting in their petition. I guess that was my question was, is it seemed as though the court was raising issues and saying, well, we're not able to kind of address this now, but it must be happening. I assume there's a process for it happening. The issue is, you want to keep it as expungement, the way that it is now, or do you want to move that to sealing?
I mean, my thought on it is, I generally just wholesale don't like the idea of expungement and completely destroying records, but I'm certainly in support of moving this to a sealing system where immediately the only person who has access to it is that 18 to 21-year-old defendant and their attorney. And just leaving it there.
Okay.
And if there are situations where law enforcement needs to access it for whatever reason, they would have to go through the state's attorney, and they would have to justify why they need it. That's my thought. Right.
We'll come back to this issue about getting it justified, right? Because I'll get more details on that. Okay.
Look like you want to say.
I do. I largely agree with you that the only people that I support moving to the sealing system, where the only people that have access are the defendant, or the 18 to 21-year-old and their attorney. I don't know that I agree with you that there should be any system for anyone else to get it. Yeah,
I think my rationale is that I mean, as mentioned earlier, the biggest issue we're going to encounter, I think, is when law enforcement has access to things. And I can still see a rationale for, somebody who was 20 years old and then maybe 10 years later, they're involved and some sort of big conspiracy, or perhaps the case from when they were 20 years old places them as a witness or a person of interest, or somebody who may have information regarding a cold case 10 years down the road, and the cops may say, that kid has a record and we want to know how it's tied to this other homicide that we've been investigating. I could see that, but I don't think that, they should just be able to access it without going through the state's attorney to explain why, and then justifying it to get a judge to unseal the record just for that law enforcement purpose. But I think that's going to be another decision point that we have to address.
So I just wanted to raise something in the existing law here on page 32 and exceptions under subsection B, subdivision 2. Talks about DCIC retaining special index of sentences for sex offenses that require registration. And I'm not sure how this fits in with the whole issue of expungement in here, because there's no sex offenses that are qualifying crimes. So I don't know if I'm missing something there. Like, I'm just kind of wondering why that's there. And it's existing law.
Yeah.
And
we're not adding any.
No, you're not adding anything. It's just more of a thing that I just kind of thought, well, if sex offenses are not eligible, maybe I'd have to think about it. You haven't heard from, you haven't heard from the Defender General's office yet, right?
Correct.
Okay. I assume you're going.
Yes.
I just confirmed them for Tuesday.
Oh, great.
Okay. All right. So that was just like one of the questions I have, and it may be that it works with something else, which is like, maybe if a 19-year-old got a deferred.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So if they got a deferred under the existing system, it would be expunged. There's a lot of sex offenses that are not eligible under current law for deferreds, but it might be like a lesser registrable offense. So maybe it's kind of, you know what I mean? You got to kind of piece the statutes together, and so it might apply in those circumstances.
Yeah.
But when I read this, and in the context of where it's located, it just made me, it kind of gives the impression that sex offenses are qualifying crimes for eligibility under petitioning for sealing, which they are not. So I just raised that as an issue and something maybe to ask Marshall or whoever it is who was testifying. So page 33, no changes to the sealing special fund, and I think as you guys heard yesterday, it's really only the DUI ones that you have to pay the fee for. 7611. That was actually, y'all added that at Senator Bruce urging that one of these years that the big sealing bill didn't pass, but you got a few little pieces in that 7611 was added. Page 34, moving on to section 2 on deferred. There's only brought up a great point in that, and I think the chair responded very appropriately with an answer to how we would do that, which is that you'd want to make clear around the application for the sealing for the deferreds, because if right now, if you successfully complete your deferred sentence, then your record is expunged, right? And you don't want to affect those cases that have already been, the person's already been sentenced, there's already been an agreement. Terms of the agreement are, if I successfully complete, my record's going to be expunged. You've got an issue, you've got, there's a policy question there, but there's also, I think, a legal issue with the application of basically taking away that person. They've already, entered into a plea agreement and agreed to that sentence. We don't want to affect that sentence that's already in place. So we're being prospective, and I can just do that with some, application language at the end.
I think that makes sense unless, maybe you have any thoughts? Thank you.
And then the other thing with that is just that it's changing expungement to standard. And then page 37. So this is modeled after, and it's been in all the bills that keep not quite making it across the finish line. I haven't heard any real much testimony at all, or certainly any objection to these, which is around the, and this is, you can debate whether or not you want an expungement seal, whatever, but this has always been, the language has always been expungement of municipal violations. So we're not talking crimes, we're talking about judicial bureau offenses. This is built on something that the legislature did a few years ago with traffic offenses, with motor vehicle offenses. Around like at a certain point, they just get expunged off your record. And so this is just modeling the same process. So 2 years following satisfaction of a judgment for a municipal violation, Judicial Bureau makes an entry of expunged and notifies the municipality.
You have a question?
I do, and that is, what is a municipal violation? Like, I've never heard that term before.
Oh, might be like a housing code. I mean, I don't even know.
Okay, okay.
It could be, the municipality has the ability to adopt their own provisions around, various things that you violate, parking on the street.
Getting all their ordinances.
Got it. That's what I needed.
The snow plow has to come through and all that kind of stuff.
Got it. That's what I needed. I was like, I don't thank you.
And that all like goes to judicial bureau.
Thanks. Ordinance violation.
And then on page 39, it is amending the statute that exists now that the legislature passed a few years ago, doing that for motor vehicle violations. But when it was done, I don't think this committee ever saw it because I never worked on it or whatever, but I think it was done in the transportation committees, and there wasn't like a language in there saying to which records it applied. And so you just need an application date in there. And that's why it kind of seems weird that, it looks a little odd there, which is that the section will apply to motor vehicle violations that occur on or after July 1st, 2021. And so we just kind of have to go back and capture that so that it's clear. And then the effective date for all of this is July 1st. But you want to think about, timing and what does everybody need to do to kind of gear up. That's kind of just like the default. I think I'm trying to remember, were we talking about a different bill? I thought we were talked about September 1st, or maybe I'm thinking about a different bill, but obviously, whenever you're doing stuff like this, you want to make sure that the people who are, who need to implement it have plenty of time, get educated about the law, state's attorneys and, defense barges trainings every summer, kind of with updates about what happened during the legislative session. You want to give court personnel time to be trained and all of those kinds of things. I can't recall whether or not Judge Zoney addressed that yesterday around timing. But I would say that probably, July 1st is the default for all legislation, but I would say that's probably a little fast for everybody to be able to know, but I don't know.
Yeah. We can figure that out. Committee, any questions or comments before we hit pause again? And I think we made some progress today, and I think that, you know, with everything we talked about, we can all think on things over the weekend. And then when coming back next week, we'll be hearing from vendors. We'll also, I believe, we'll be hearing from Jeff Wallen to get more of a technical about this bill that'll allow us to make some additional decisions, and then back the following week and maybe even, you know, do some final markup and maybe even vote the bill out. So that's my timeline.
I do have one quick one.
Yeah.
Michelle, I see that this covers criminal violations. This covers municipal/local ordinance violations. But it's over in here, so it doesn't apply to civil motor vehicle violations as far as they will always exist on a record. Whereas points will go off after.
No, so what I mentioned, so this section at the very end here, section 4.
Yeah.
That is just going and amending a law that y'all passed a few years ago. That's the one I mentioned that I don't think it came in here. Maybe it did. Anthea was covering transportation at the time. And y'all already passed a law that expunges motor vehicle records after a period of time. And that's at 23, let's see. I can send that to you. So, and so this municipal violation one that's in section 3 is just kind of modeled after what you already did for motor vehicles.
Okay.
So right, so 2 years following the satisfaction of a judgment resulting from adjudication or conviction of a violation identified in the subsection, judicial bureau should see, yeah, this didn't go to judiciary because it wouldn't be a conviction. We don't say that for a judicial bureau. So, yeah, so this was passed in 2021. And so 2 years after you complete whatever the, you know, sentence was for the violation, then it's expunged.
What's exposed? Your criminal violation
No.
or your civil violation?
Just civil.
Just
This
civil.
says, yeah, I mean, the language is a little, maybe I should clean this up. You guys have any opposition to that? If I clean this language up a little bit?
Well, largely it was ceiling.
Yeah, so there's a certain number of offenses. Operating an unregistered vehicle, failing to possess registration, failing to possess license, operating after suspension, operating without a license, operating without insurance, and operating an unsuspected vehicle.
Uninspected.
So those, and I don't know, I have to go back and look, maybe some of those are. But no, because it says judicial bureau, so they've all got to be civil violations. Those are.
Like the one just listed off for civil says.
Right, so those after 2 years get taken off your record.
So it appears as though they didn't address the moving violation, just. Oh. Yeah, okay, I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
I mean, it might be worth having DMV come in and just say how this is working. Since you're gonna model it for municipal violations. And also if I'm gonna monkey with the language.
We're suggesting DMV for the municipal section.
No, for section 4, which is the application for the section for 23 VSA 2303. And also what I can do is I'll start a strike all amendment for y'all, just incorporating the decision points that you guys have already done. And I'll just work on what I think would be some appropriate cleanup language for that statute. And then, I'll send it to Kayla and Kayla can send it to DMV.
Okay.
You want to hear from
And then we
DMV
can,
next week.
yeah, and that'd be a big thing. That's big perhaps. Wherever works. Great. Awesome. All right, so we have Senator Chitman coming in at 11:15. Talk about the rule against perpetuities. So we can take a break and come back.